Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Hi,
Welcome
everyone.
joining us from Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Today has been a really exciting day. So, I'm still on a high. And I think what better way to, end this day with Manana, it's completing this beautiful day for me personally. Um, but yes, welcome everyone. Today we have the wonderful, wonderful privilege of speaking to someone. After this conversation, you're going to stream all of Manana's music if you haven't done so
We're
already,
gonna go to
because
all of
you're
these
just going
shows.
to love every little bit of this.
Yes. Hi, how are you, Manana?
Hello. Thank you so much, firstly, for having me. I am very well. Um, I have been having a beautiful time here in Cape Town. So, yeah, I'm good.
Ooh. Ooh. Must be nice. I have the supreme pleasure today of introducing Manana, who hails from Babane, the southern African mountains of Eswatini. Manana, whose real name is Ndumiso Manana, is a young and multi-talented singer, composer, producer. His work suggests a deep bravery, emotional maturity, and honesty, which makes him instantly relatable. Whether it's behind a piano or microphone, he's able to express what the heart needs to hear, simply and honestly. He's not just a formidable singer and poignant lyricist, he also has writing credentials on some of South Africa's most beloved tracks, having written for and worked with Amifagu on Bai, yes. Amanda Black on Africa, and Salty Soul,
Yes.
as well as worked with Seva Kapstad, Rolene. Okay, if you've been listening to the latest EP, you will know this. And the upcoming Miller Smith. Manana oozes a gentle and wise musicality in every single one of his offerings and is poised to be a household name for an ever growing songbook. He effortlessly bends sound and silence to his will as both a co-writer and vocalist on this new body of work, and each track is a soundscape of its own, juxtaposing beauty and pain while detailing the conflict of being surrounded by miracles while carrying heartbreak within, making for a sparse yet satisfying sonic manifestation of physical and emotional yearning. I mean.
Come on. Even me, I just want to listen to the music after this bio. I don't need to hear any more. After this,
Wow.
I'm there.
I'm listening to it myself and I'm like, wow, how kind.
You did that though, so it's facts. It's facts.
Thank you. Thank you.
I guess the first question, right, for me particularly is that you've had a journey. So for people who know you, who've been following your work from distance, from all the EPs that you've had, right, know that in many ways this work is a culmination of so much of that growth, right? And I want to know what makes this EP different. What have you learned about yourself in the process of making this album that feels completely different to any of your other work?
Um, I think this project is probably the first one where we, as a creative team putting this project together, we actually were intentional about the story of the entire project, not just focusing on songs individually. We were very, very, very intentional about where each song needed to be, also because it tied into the title of the EP as well. Um, and yeah, I think thinking hard about just, track listing and the flow from song to song, as I'm sure you've heard that there is, if you listen to from the EP, I mean into the EP from song one to song last, there's a flow from each song, and just having those little interludes as well was another kind of thought process. And yeah, I guess it just obviously it's taken people are like, oh, it's so short, but it actually took time to even put it together, because we were so focused on the little details that we knew people would love.
Mm.
Yeah.
What inspired this album?
I'll say the
I,
people around me. Yeah. Yeah, so the people around me and people I've kind of been meeting and speaking to for the last, I'd say, 3 years. I've heard of people going through different relationship situations, breakups, um, falling in love,
Mm,
and things like that. And obviously, not everyone's story is the same. People don't always have to go through this earth-shattering heartbreak in order to, I mean, not heartbreak, but earth-shattering kind of moment in order to have their heart broken.
mm,
Not every single heartbreak happens like a romantic movie where you see some lover cheating or whatever, you know. So just kind of navigating how sometimes just dwindling indifference can break up a relationship, and things like that. And then also me myself in my relationship, you know, kind of navigating that space, and how to express myself properly, and those songs kind of coming forth towards the end of the EP as well. So yeah, those things kind of
I'm really,
inspired.
I'm re-
Yeah.
I'm really interested in the title of the EP, right? So in the beginning was the end, right? And I'm thinking about like the biblical reference in the beginning was the word, right? And I wanted to speak about that. I thought it was quite an interesting sort of play on words, and I wanted to know what were your thoughts in coming up with the title of the EP.
um to be honest with you, the biblical reference, I don't want to say it had nothing to do, because it did kind of, but also not, in the sense that it's got nothing to do with the story of the EP, but it just so perfectly put the storyline that we're trying to make into words poetically. So the in the beginning was the end kind of is telling us this love story that is, so the EP is a love story told in reverse.
yes.
And yeah, so the in the beginning was the end, just perfectly put in into words what the music was doing, you know?
What the music
Why did
was
you
doing.
decide to tell the story in reverse, right? That almost feels like an unnatural order of things, right? So you
Yes.
tell the story in reverse. So what usually would happen is that, you'd have the butterflies and the love and the joy in the beginning,
Yeah, yeah,
and then you're like, don't tell me
yeah,
about the person, right? Right at the end, because
yeah,
that's usually
yeah,
what ending characterized by. But you
yeah.
tell the story in reverse, and I feel like that's such an interesting way to go about it. But also, I want to know how your mindset shifted as the storytelling was going on. Because I mean, you start right at the end of the story and you go to the beginning.
Mm. Um, sorry, the question was how the.
So basically, I'm interested in why you told the love story in reverse,
Oh,
right?
I
So why did you
see.
tell the love story in reverse, but also what that then meant for your musicality to, or the way that
Okay,
you wrote the songs, knowing that you were going to
okay.
do it in reverse.
So I think the point, like I was talking briefly a few seconds ago, the point of doing that was kind of showing how the end sometimes is preceded by this, like I say, this earth shattering, like your infidelity or whatever it is, right? But sometimes, and a lot of the times, people just kind of don't do things they're supposed to. They don't really treat each other well in a relationship. It's not necessarily that you become this evil person or whatever. It's just that maybe you just become indifferent to the other person, and
Mm.
that could, be heartbreaking. And we felt as though starting at the end and showing people, like, almost as a cautionary tale, starting at the end and being like, okay, we're here now, and then shifting towards the beginning, where all I seek is the end of or the beginning of this love story, and the description of this intense love, and how sometimes infatuation paints these pictures of grandeur when you're, falling in love with someone and you're infatuated with them, and
Mm.
how all of that seems like it will never ever fade, and how, this thing will carry you through.
Mm.
how sometimes you don't think about the fact that at some point the infatuation won't be enough to, you know, make me love this person. Sometimes it will be hard work. Sometimes I'll have to do things that are sacrificial.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
so I think telling the story in reverse kind of was a cautionary tale, showing people that the beginning can, you know, a lot of the time is so sweet, and it's not that you um didn't love each other enough or whatever. It's just that, you know, sometimes you just drop the ball and you end up at call me.
I,
Instead
I
of
want
calling.
I want to speak a little bit about vulnerability. I feel that a lot of your music is you inviting us into, you know, a space that you don't normally invite people into, right? Which is just like this deep-seated vulnerability and emotion. And I
Mm.
want to know, like, what is the place of vulnerability in the work? But more importantly, do you feel a sense of like people feel entitled to the stories that you tell in these songs, right? So every time someone meets you, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you know, Sunday morning reminds me of da 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 da." So like, there's this space of people like telling you their lives, right? Because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
relate to your music.
um I think yes, people do definitely obviously feel entitled to the music, but I think in the best way possible. I think the reason why a lot of people have been relating to the music is simply because everyone has gone through similar things at some point, whether it's the love side of it or the heartbreak side of it. I think people have been in good and terrible relationships. And for me, um, I figured, as much as I'm being vulnerable and honest about certain things, yes, my story is unique, but a lot of the things that have happened aren't necessarily. And I think that is comforting for a lot of people to not only have music where they can find relatability, but also know that other people are finding relatability within the music. So, I mean, yes, I think as artists, sometimes we are vulnerable, but the listenership and the following and loving of the music just shows that the listeners are as vulnerable. To be able to be like, oh my goodness, call me mood or Sunday morning mood, means that you're in that space and you're being honest about the fact that actually this is where I am right now, you know? So
Mm.
as much as it's vulnerable, I don't think it's as it's not an exposing vulnerability, if you will. If that, I don't know if that's an opposite, but anyway, you know what I mean.
I think it's interesting that you're speaking about like an observing vulnerability because you know there's a running joke among like writers and poets that like their friends never want to tell them their stories because they know it'll always land up in a book or in a poem, etc. Right? Um, and I guess that might also be the experience of your friends that their stories will land up in a song or like an EP. But I'm always curious about how artists draw the line, right? For your own experiences. So how do you decide that this I will write a song about and this I will not? Because this is so vulnerable, this is so personal, this is so intimate for me. How do you make the distinction between what will be a good song and what should just be a good personal moment for yourself?
Yo, depth. Um, I think, okay, let me speak to the 2 points. You brought up 2 points there. Point number one is it is it is a cliche that a lot of people don't want to tell their friends, their artist friends, things. But I make a point of kind of not tailoring my story so that it's not as specific as people around me, you know, so that people, so even if you listen to the songs, you might relate to it, but you'll never know that maybe this was inspired by something you went through, kind of vibe. If you're one of my friends, firstly, I might have exposed myself there, but whatever. And then secondly, to be honest with you, ne, I think that as an artist, I am providing a service to people who listen to the music. So this service that I provide, it helps people express things that they can't necessarily express, and maybe know how they feel even when they don't know how to express it. You know what I mean? So I haven't yet come across a situation in my life where I felt as though this was a little too personal and I can't write about this. Simply because, like I say, as much as my life is unique and the experiences that I feel and go through are unique, with the writing of the music, I can help a lot of other people that don't necessarily know how to express themselves and how other people feel when they go through these things and how maybe feeling a certain way is okay. So I haven't yet come across a story or a situation in my life where I felt as though I couldn't write about it. Yeah.
I have a question about heartbreak. Alma and I were talking earlier, and I was saying to Alma, I'm like, there is something that Manana does with heartbreak that is so romantically beautiful that I'm like, I kind of want to have my heart broken so that like I experience these emotions in song, right? And I want to know like, where do you draw that from, right? So I think about one of the first singles, You Don't. And I feel that many of us have found ourselves in that situation where you sort of kind of are in to someone who's not into you, but you're always the person who this person comes and phones and relies on, but you just are not there, right? So this
Mm,
idea of an unrequited love. And
mm,
I want to talk a little bit about that, right? About the writing about those moments where like it's so
mm.
to write about, you know, I love you and you know I
But you
love
don't
you,
love
but
me. Yeah.
you don't love me.
Um, you know what, Ne? Like, one thing I realized about writing these songs, Ne, is that they're very therapeutic. Like, writing this stuff is very therapeutic. So I'll always say that writing the song about the heartbreak is 100%, 1,000,000% easier than going through the thing. So once you write about it, it almost makes the thing that you went through worth it. Kind of. Not
Sort
not
of, kind of.
really, but you know what I'm saying? Like, because at the end of the day, maybe it's that thing didn't go to waste. Because what's worse for me is if ne, you go through this thing and you like this person and you tell them and it's not, and then you kind of just spew in disdain and like heartbreak for the next few months and nothing has come from it. Yes, okay, in a perfect world, yes, we would have rather had the person say, yeah, I love you too. But if, you know, I'm going to get something from it, at least a song and you know, something.
So
Glass,
okay, like a
glass
few
half full.
verses. Yes, I got a song out of the heartbreak. Okay, I know,
Something, you
right?
know.
I really want to know about like because people evolve and change, right? So who you were in your first EP is not who you are now, right?
Mm,
So there's an evolution in your career, there's an evolution in you as a person, there's an evolution in you in your relationships. But I want to know how the evolution in your relationships has changed the way that you write about love, right? So being married, not being
mm.
heartbroken and umgo.com, how has that changed? How is that? No, guys, umgo.com is a real place. So it's like a real place to be in, and it's a
Yeah,
terrible place to be in.
yeah,
How has
yeah.
that changed the way that she writes about like love and relationships?
So I think being married and married to the person that I'm married to, um, obviously it's just under 3 years now, so it hasn't been a long time. But one thing I found is that, and people who have been in relationships longer than I've been will know this, is that once you're used to someone, you can take the things that you so loved about the person for granted, né? And slowly but surely, um, things that you know are unique about this person and that are like that make them so unique, slowly but surely they just seem like normal things. So what I found is that for me, writing a love song now is no longer, hey, I love you, you're the best, you're the one for me. It's now tapping into the uniqueness of this person. It's trying to milk every single emotion, every single characteristic, and every single thing that makes them unique to write a song that um, truly expresses what you feel and what and also kind of brings back the fresh new love that you had when you were first infatuated with each other.
And I
It's
feel that
yeah,
I feel
yeah,
that connects nicely with All I Seek, right? I find that when you listen to All I Seek, what you speak about, right? So it's not this airy, flary type of thing, but it's really like, oh my goodness, like there is this little tiny thing that you do that really like gets me going. And All
yeah.
I Seek for me is it's like that. It's like, yes, I was infatuated with you, but now I'm sitting in this love and I'm seeking your beauty, whether it's an
Mm,
outwardly beauty, but also I'm seeking the beauty inside. And I, and
mm,
and and that's so beautiful for me because I think and I suppose my question is, what is your love practice, right? So Bell Hooks often speaks about for Black people, the crucial path, love is a crucial path to healing, right?
mm,
And I want to know what
mm.
is your love practice because I feel like an overall listening of your music, right? There is this deep-seated romantic and someone who's just like, I believe in love, right? Like I may have been
Mm.
hurt a couple of times, but like love is just so beautiful, and I just want to write about it, sing about it. So I want to talk a little bit about your reflections on love and your love practice.
Um, Firstly, you got it on the nail. I definitely believe in love, and I believe I believe it's such a big part of our culture. I think I think obviously, when I say our culture, I mean the continent, African continent. We express love maybe in not so much a Western and romantic comedy way, but our our love for respect and honor in our cultures, our love for respect for elders is an expression of love and a society that I think even in areas of extreme poverty, you find people who are full of joy because of such love. Now, to go into the romantic love, um, yo, I mean, I'd say deep poetic things. I'd say deep poetic things, but it's just so nice to know you are loved and that you love someone that loves you as much, you know? And
Alma can relate.
now,
Yeah, it's a thing.
and
It's a thing,
yeah,
man. Like it's a thing. It's a thing to know that like in a world that makes you feel like you're constantly having to strive to a standard of
mm,
like almost perfection in order to be acceptable, there is somebody who just feels like
mm,
flaws and all,
mm,
without
mm,
your wig, your whatever, your lashes, whatever, all these
mm.
accessories, all this black girl magic, black excellence. Somebody who just feels like in the package that you are so sufficient, you are so more than enough. They just could not imagine
Yeah,
forever without you. Like it
on
just
the
wouldn't
nail.
make
Honestly,
sense.
like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think even for the moments of any of us or any people who have gone through heartbreak, the moments that are sweet before getting to that point need to be remembered. I think we have this thing where obviously we remember yesterday, but we don't remember 2 days ago kind of vibe, where you remember the worst of the worst, but the sweet and best parts of everything that you go through are kind of swept under the rug, you know. So for me, the love thing is important simply because the sweet moments will always outweigh the bitter. I hope.
They will. They will. They
Yeah.
will. I think that's like I think it's such a beautiful thing that you've said. I know that Cautionary has spoken about one of his favorite songs, but for me, Distance is one of my favorite songs. And like
Mm.
so now
Honestly,
we've seen
truly,
it live, right?
I can't get married to distance, but I want to. I really, really want to. Just the bridge, I'm yours. Wabona, how would you,
Ah,
I'm yours. Yo!
Friend, get your coins right. Get your
that's
coins right, and
funny.
then Manana can sing at your wedding. I want to talk about your musical journey because I think that it started quite young, right? So your journey
Mm,
towards becoming an artist. And I ask this because I think often when like black parents think of like careers for their children, music isn't necessarily one of them. So there's a thing about you must be an engineer, you must be an accountant,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
must be an advocate, you know.
Yeah, the big five careers.
Yeah, and then and you are now like you're an artist, you studied this at university as well, so there's a thing there about like the trajectory of the ways in which you've always known that you wanted to be an artist. And I'm really curious about your musical journey, because I think that we are in a different place, just as to how parents think about music, how they think about the arts as a career, right?
Yeah. So funny enough, I always tell people that, yo, I won the lotto with the parents that I have, because they were the ones that actually pushed me to audition for the Drakensberg Boys Choir School when I was a young kid. And since then, they have been, honestly, and I say this with, I know everyone says this about their parents, but my parents are my number one fans. They have supported me from day one, and they made sure that I stuck to music and stuck to writing and stuck to everything that I'm doing now. They made sure that I didn't deviate from the path. Um, Obviously, as a family, we've had struggles with other members of family and friends being very confrontational. Funny enough, very confrontational about, hey, what are you doing with your child? Um, he's playing around, studying music and all that kind of stuff. But my parents have always stuck to their guns and made sure that I knew that they're proud of this decision I have made. It's yeah, like it's unique. I'll say that.
It really is. What did studying music at like varsity level do for your craft, right? Because that's something I'm always interested in. It's like the bridge between talent, right,
Mm,
and ability, the honing
mm,
of the craft.
mm.
And I want to know what that did for you, and if you feel like that was like a useful space for you to have been in, or like people have different feelings about that. But I'm always curious about what the honing of the craft looks like outside of the talent.
Um, I I think, okay, I'll speak for myself, because I know that in my life I've always been surrounded by people who are far more talented than I am. So at every stage of my life, I haven't been the most talented person in the room by any measure. So for me, studying and training was important. I as a young guy in the Drakensberg, there was a friend of mine, Usibono, who was not just a crazy singer, but he was a crazy piano player. So by the time he was 13, he was playing these fugues and these different things on keys and stuff. And then I moved to high school, and there's singers that naturally just have this beautiful tone and range and things like that. So at every point, looking at these people, I thought to myself, Buffett, if I don't check this thing out, I will be very average, and it'll be pointless for me to even check this music thing out. So, and then university. Before I got to university, I didn't know how to play piano. Um, I hadn't really had. I won't say I was a lazy child, but I was more interested in playing soccer than taking piano lessons when I was in school. So by the time I got to university, I didn't know how to play piano, so my writing skills were limited at best. And then I get there, and there's Langama Vuso, there's Zoe Modicha, there's Spam Dlalose, Vuyosotashe. Like, I can name people who are in the music industry right now, and they all have the voice. I mean, all these guys are crazy singers, right? So I sit there and I think to myself, my goodness, firstly, I don't have a quarter of the voice these people have. Secondly, I see Zoe messing around on the guitar, playing these crazy contrapuntal, like different riffs, and I see this guy doing that. I see that. So I'm also like, yo, man, I need to pick up some skills. So it was very important for me. I always tell people that I think obviously I had musical talent, but I give a lot of credit to all the teachers that I've had growing up. I've had some phenomenal teachers. Really, really, I respect my teachers 100%, because even now, as I am sitting and playing at the piano, being able to sing a song would not have been possible without my university education. Also, just musicality and sensitivity to be able to write a song and then perform it and sing it in a way that is true to what's being said. Those are things I learned in university. Interpretation of songs and things like that was all stuff I learned studying music. With that all being said, I have met a lot of people that were studying accounting or whatever else, and now are in the music space, and they had these things that I had to learn and pick up. They had those things naturally. So for me, it was important. It is the center point of my music career.
I want to speak a bit about nostalgia. I think that in your music, there's this air of like remembering and thinking back to, the olden days. We don't want to call them the good old days because that has a bad connotation.
Yeah,
But just to think about the place of like thinking back, I'm thinking particularly about those days,
yeah,
where and also in some other tracks where there is this sense of nostalgia, right? And just you thinking, reminiscing effectively. And I want to think about like, what is the place of remembering like the goodness or the old days or the young days? What is that place for you in your music?
what is that place?
Yeah.
Yo, um, yo, these are deep questions. Um, yo, man, like, so, so, like, for the last few years, I've been meeting and, breaking bread and eating meals with different friends of mine that I was raised with. And we always talk about how the plan sounded like this at that age, and this is what it was going to be like. And now we are where we are, and things have not gone according to plan, obviously, a lot of the time. Or the plans changed, and or life just messed us up into forcing plans to change. And sometimes when I write this music, it's opening this innocence, especially from when I was in the Drakensberg. Like I spent 6 years there, and for the last 3 years, the friendships that I formed there, a lot of them are still some of my closest friends right now. But there was this innocence and like this heart that we had to approaching life that I think I try keep, but every now and then looking back helps me understand that at some points I've lost it. I need to go back to that.
Hmm.
Um,
I like that so much, right? Because I think that what you effectively are saying is that we get so bogged down in this adult life and in these problems and these many things that we forget that there was a time period in our lives where like even though there were pressures like school,
mm,
sports, music, those type of things, there was actually just the desire to enjoy this particular moment. And this
mm,
in it for me is that it's just like, where can we go back to a place where we just enjoy
mm.
the moments for the moments instead of thinking about, okay, what does this moment mean for me in 5 years or in 10 years? But you just sit in that innocence. I like that so much.
Thank you. You said it better than I did.
I really am like, I think that there are dominant genres in South Africa. So there's like very dominant genres like whatever, right? And you have chosen a very distinctive sound that's very different to what is quite dominant.
Mm,
And I want to know if sometimes you ever feel sort of like a trepidation or like a fear about having
mm,
gone in this very different direction to what is quite popular at the moment, right? So
mm.
I guess the question is twofold. So why have you chosen to go in the musical direction that you've chosen? But also in the kind of industry that you are in this country, do you ever experience like a kind of anxiety about having chosen to go in the direction that you did musically?
Mm, yeah, I guess so. I think so. I think for the first time when putting this EP together, for the first time I might have had a moment where I felt, I don't want to say insecure, but probably a little insecure about whether or not I'd be loved in my home, my own land. Because when we released, when I started working with Noble and we released the first single, Spotify wasn't here yet, so that was a while ago, and we were placed on some playlist in the UK or something, and we did some decent numbers on there, and I was like, oh, this is dope, like people like the music and whatever. But then Spotify came to South Africa and Apple Music became more popular, and now now we look at these platforms as a reflection of how your own people feel about you. So it's obviously a daunting thing to write music that people repeatedly tell you is not our music, and that people aren't listening to this. And I mean, I've heard it many times, and I'm sure you obviously know this. I've heard it many times when people telling me that people aren't ready for the sound here. So even when we were looking for a home for the EP, a label home for the EP, some of the labels told us that nah, this won't work, and people aren't ready for this, and all that kind of stuff. And I think people like Elaine and Lang actually releasing music and then doing well, not just on radio but online, really kind of settled, I think, a lot of us singer-songwriters and people who don't write music straight ahead, you know. And also someone like Msaki, looking at like Msaki's career, where she is a singer-songwriter through and through, and how she's been able to basically create a space where songwriters and singers can know that, look, people, especially on this continent, one thing I will say is that people like good music.
Yeah.
And they will not hold back to tell you that, and they will not hold back to show you, you know. So yeah, obviously, because I'm not a Yano's artist and I'm not singing about Ilok Drum, it's yeah,
Wow.
it's an experience.
I mean, how did it feel to perform? Well, we saw Letlhogonolo and I actually saw you guys. And
I was
for
there. I was there. I was there.
know that they missed out. Okay, this could have been there, but they were sleeping. Um, but there was a thing about just the way in which that audience, right, was so receptive of the music. People were listening. People knew like your music from like your first single, right? And people were singing along, and we were all there just thinking that we're the backup singers for Distance, you know, etc. And I want to know if that in any way shifted something for you, just in the ways in which you think about people's reception towards your music, but also what it felt like to perform live after such a long while.
100%, 100%. I look. Obviously, I know that there are people who listen to the music, because, you know, when you look at the Spotify and whatever, you see that there are people listening to music. But
It's
all
me
that
and Alma.
As
all it's funny though, like all that digital stuff just doesn't seem like the real world. So even putting these shows together, these three shows, and then the other one that we're doing at the end of the month in Rustenburg, whatever, all these shows that we put together, um, we were like, look, we don't know how it's gonna go during COVID. Are people keen to buy tickets? All that kind of stuff. And people obviously bought tickets, and Joburg was sold out in 3 days, which was really heartwarming for me and comforting to know that not only are people keen to listen to the music on their iPhone and whatever else, but they're actually keen to come through and listen to the music live and see us perform it for them. But the biggest thing for me was when I started singing the first note and people are singing the words. That for me is, look, I haven't been dejected. I won't say I've been dejected in COVID, but after not having been able to perform for some time, really you do go through some things where you're like, okay, maybe there's another way to go about my life and do another career, or maybe I should just stick to songwriting or whatever, you know, and because I do love it. But as soon as I sang that song, that is just, hey, it's cheesy, but that's, you know, that's what we do it for. That's what I do it for, you know, to be able to share the moments with people. And even songs that honestly I thought that no one would even, you know, sing along to. And I mean, I was wearing in-ears in the show, so I didn't hear I purposefully left them in so you can make sure that I'm, you know, comfortable, the band is going well. But as soon as I took off one of my in-ear monitors and I heard the crowd singing, "Hope you think about me too," I was like, oh wow, guys. Eesh.
I
It
would say, I
really,
just
yeah.
want to say, I was singing from the first song to the last song, and I
Thank you.
think your friend was standing next to me to be like, "Oh, you know all the music." I'm like, "Look, I am here for every single bit of the music, right?" Because I
Thank
think
you.
that what I honestly think is that I think South Africa there's a shift, right? So you spoke
Mm,
about Elaine and you spoke about Langa Mavuso and you spoke about Zoe and also Msaki. I think there is a way in which um, the resurgence of R&B and soul is coming back, right? Like I feel like we're entering, you know, some people are in their early 30s and some people are about to enter their 30s. And it feels like, yes, we want to, you know, boom, 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 but we also want to mellow down, right? And we
mm,
find that the music that's coming in, particularly this year, right?
mm,
Where like Zoe released, Bongezi release, you release, Langa, all that music. I was like, South Africa is really, really super talented. And to be able to experience you perform the music, right, for me was just also something else because I felt that you did your best to feed off the energy of the crowd. And the
mm,
crowd was just like there with you to be
mm,
like, no, we're here, you know, we're
mm,
here. And
mm.
I really, really like enjoyed that. I want to speak a little bit
Thank
about
you. Thank you.
collaborations, right?
Mm.
You know, you surprised us Sunday morning. We were there, like we're like, oh, is it gonna happen? And then you're like, I was like, okay, so yeah, I want to speak about how you feel about collaborations. You know, one of the other collaborations you've done, which is on Alanga's album, is "I Wish," and I want to
Mm,
speak about like what you think collaborations does to the song because I feel like there is a particular something that was
mm,
added just by having a Sunday morning. Like it was tender in
mm,
the way that it may not possibly have been if it was just you.
mm. Um, so I'll take it back to when we actually wrote the song with Ro, and we had done this writing camp at the beginning of the year, and we were working on songs for her project and my project, and we, you know, when you do writing camps, you're usually given like different objectives from either A&R or the label or whoever else to be like, we need one song like this, one song like this, one song like that. So this song, Sunday Morning, was not on anyone's pitch list. They didn't want any song that sounded like it. But it just came so naturally, so easily. Literally just building the song with the production guys and then Firmin, the vocal producer, and Ro as well. It came so naturally. And even just the little notes, like the "I can't choose, but if I could, I guess I'd say," like small things like that came so naturally. Um, that initially we were like, okay, you take first verse, no, and then you take second verse. But then we started messing around with the demo where we were singing like octaves under each other the whole time. And that kind of created this image, this perfect image of how these people are going through the same thing at the same time. And you, both voices create that delicateness. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm,
As
mm-hmm,
opposed
mm-hmm.
to a breakup song where the guy says you did this and then she says but yeah but you did that, which is a lot of time what happens. This thing where we're kind of both going through this thing that we, I mean, this is obviously a one-sided story, but this thing is kind of two people going through the same thing at the same time that they ditch each other kind of vibe, you know.
Yeah.
So that kind of gives that, you know, delicateness to it. So performing it live, obviously, you know, we can perform it without Ro being there, but I like it had like I obviously sent her a message a few weeks before the show and was like, yo fam, please tell me you can make it, and you can come. And she was like, yeah, for sure. So we've been able to like do different appearances performing the song, and performing it together is, like you say, it's perfect because of that. When you perform with the two people together, that delicateness is just perfectly illustrated.
Oh, real.
What is your favorite song on the EP, and what is the most difficult song to write and why?
Oh, okay. So my favorite song is probably If You're Here, There's Nowhere Need to Go. But the hardest to write was probably All I Seek. Um, so All I Seek, I went back and forth with a lot of the verses, and I, I mean, I consider myself a songwriter, and I like to think I'm good at it, but lyrically, I've never necessarily considered myself the best wordsmith in the world. So I had to sit down quite a bit, and day by day, I was tweaking here and there lines and lyrics in that song, definitely. So I think that easily, All I Seek was definitely the hardest song to write, and If You Hear There's No Need to Go was is my favorite.
I feel that All I Seek is also really special to you. I
Mm.
remember there was a moment when you were performing it, right? And you just had to you take a breather.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, because I feel like in many ways it was just like, you know, when you're singing to the love of your life and like in that moment you're probably picturing your partner and you're just like, it's you,
yeah,
babes,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And and it made it even more special because I think that oftentimes, for me at least, what I really appreciate about your music and seeing you perform the music was the fact that I was like, this is coming from a real place. This is coming from an authentic place.
Mm,
It's not I'm singing because heartbreak is fashionable or I'm
mm, mm,
singing because love is fashionable. I'm
mm,
actually all I'm seeking is this person's
mm,
beauty.
mm,
And
mm, mm.
like I'm thinking about it in this moment and it's so incredibly special.
Thank
Um
you,
and yeah, I mean we absolutely love your music.
thank you.
I've literally introduced like five of my friends now to your music. I'm like, no, 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 you just start with electricity. Maybe it's your vibe, and then you'll move on. I suppose I wanted to speak about there is also some political messaging in your music, right? So you think about Hey Now, and it's like a call to action in many instances, right? Like asking like where are all these men who are good to women
Mm,
effectively,
mm,
right?
mm, mm,
Like where are
mm,
all these people who are good just inherently
mm.
because they're good, not because
Yeah.
it's your sister, it's your cousin, it's your wife, like it's just you're good for good. And I want to
Mm,
speak a bit about that, right? So sort of the political messaging, the and also in many ways like Minanawe can also be taken to be some form of like, you know, call to action and chanting, and I want to speak a little bit about that, like the political messaging of those particular songs.
mm. With Hey Now, so Hey Now obviously was released. I think it was in 2017. Hey Now was released, um, and and it was written a year or two before that, and it's more and more now. We've made a piano version of it and different versions of the song, and had the privilege to perform it live, and you know again, this song was inspired is unfortunately the word I have to use. Was inspired by what a lot of women have to handle because of men, right? And the song being written 5 years ago, before the Me Too movement, before the Me Too movement, but being so relevant now
Mm.
is a little unfortunate, I feel. And the song was written, I mean, honestly, just because of what's going on and how a lot of the time you feel as though, like when we have conversations about abuse, and we have conversations about femicide, you'll sit with your friends and you say to yourself, yeah, but I mean, whether the conversation is, yeah, but I don't know any rapists, or I don't know any people who kill women or whatever. It's all good and well, but somewhere, somehow, someone knows rapists, and someone knows people who are killing women and children. So it felt like it's not much, writing a song about this, but also keeping quiet about it just doesn't help. So I figured, writing the song would um would be a clear way to show what I think about the matter, what I think about our role as men in what's going wrong in our societies. And I will say again that it's unfortunate that I feel as though the song is still relevant even today, and why more people have been reposting it now than they did maybe 3 years ago. But yeah.
Who are some of your influences? So like, people always ask, right? And I actually asked Zoe this the other day as well. People always ask singers, who are your like musical influences, right?
Yeah.
I'm always interested in the kind of people who influence your writing, your songwriting, the kind of songs that you write. Who are those influences for you?
Okay, so I have a songwriting Hall of Fame favorite kind of vibe, and at the at the top of that list, a lot of people, but I'd start with John Bellion, and then Julia Michaels, and then Justin Tranter, Ed Sheeran. I actually, this probably people won't believe me, but Joseph Shabalala. Mzilikas Kumalo is one of my favorite choral writers and composers. And all these people have influenced. I mean, in Hey Now probably is the song that people know most, where there's harmonies and things going on in there. So my choral background was really important in that. And listening to how the latest book, Black Mambazo, was very intentional about moving harmonies like this and all these songs, and so uniformed, influenced the harmonies in Hey Now and in Voice Message, and any harmonies that I do ever. Yeah. Yeah, and and that's sorry to interrupt, but that's always a tricky question to answer, because sometimes the people I listen to and love aren't necessarily influential in what the music sounds like, but they still, pour into what I do. Yeah.
I suppose in furtherance to Alma's question, we tried to think of like placing in the beginning was the end with particular books, right? What were some of the books that you were reading, or some of the books that you returned to, as you're writing the album, or just books that you're just like, what, if I were a writer in a novel or a short story sense, like this is the book that I would have loved to have written.
So there's this book by Ama Ata Aido. I hope I said that name right.
Yes, you did.
Okay. And actually, this book was the piece of literature for the EP. It's the book called, I think it's called African Love Stories.
Yes.
And this she's compiled these short stories. And before the EP was even a thing, before I even knew I was writing for an EP, I was looking for African literature on love, because we had the production guys and I had just finished writing and presenting a song for a Canadian artist called John Vinyl, and that one's called Star-Crossed. And all the references we were using were like Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet on Titanic, Romeo and Juliet, and I was looking for references that were particularly and uniquely African. And then that was the first piece of literature that I came across. And then I read that book, and I read it quite a bit. And that became like the inspiration for this kind of love story vibe, where, because the stories in the book aren't your typical and then they fell in love, and then this, and then that, you know what I mean? It's quite intense, and I loved it. Yeah, that book, definitely.
Oh, Amma is a writer. A writer.
Yeah.
So like, I just like, yes.
That is.
Yeah.
So before we go, because you've been so gracious with your time and we don't want to keep you. We're doing that thing that like Black parents do when your child is good at something. So you're like, what's a figure man? What's a dance? What's a dance? Most guys, when your parents' friends come and you have some sort of like, artistic ability. She's like, what was Otulele? Umalume was wait. So we're gonna need you to tulela Umalume just a little bit. Just
Can I let song request, please? Can I let song request?
What's your song request?
Okay.
What's your song request? Okay, I'm having a song request.
Yes. Just
Okay.
well, when I distance, you know, oh,
It was either going to be Distance or All I Seek. So I'm happy with either of your choices, little Honodo.
kind of
Okay.
mashed up.
So all I seek. So all medley.
A medley. Well, a medley.
A medley,
Okay.
bless.
Let's see if we can do a distance all I seek medley. All right. Okay. I wasn't told that growing up was gonna be this hard. Being in love was never supposed to happen from so far. But you know this distance, it's temporary, I know. I just miss you. I get sad sometimes, I feel alone, I miss you. It gets harder every day, though I miss you. I'm just glad I can say that I'm yours. I'm yours. I'm yours. I'm yours. I'm yours. No matter how far, I'm yours. And every drop in the ocean and every grain on the beach, all poetic notions couldn't measure how I feel. Kings and queens have their castles and captains have their fleets. I wouldn't trade their treasures, nor would I want oceans deep, 'cause all I seek is your beauty.
Hey, you know, this is imaginary money. I'm just throwing
Thank
it
you
here.
so much. I receive it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you kindly.
Oh my goodness. No,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm getting off this conversation and I'm going to play distance and all
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you so
just
much.
for just
Special performance for the cheeky natives. Yes.
Yes, it must
Yeah.
happen.
Manana, thank you so much for just giving us for being so generous. I think and I often appreciate. You know, in many ways, I feel that songwriters and artists don't get this space to sort of reflect on their music in the way that we try to do at the Cheeky Natives.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
think that people are sort of like here for this, but we're like, there's a person behind the music, and we're more interested in the person behind the music. So thank you for giving us a glimpse into the person behind the music.
Thank you. And can I just say, sorry, before I go, I really appreciate you guys having me on your platform. Not only that, but I've been obviously because of the nature of releasing an EP, I've had the privilege of doing a lot of interviews, and not very many people are invested in actually interviewing. It's just kind of cookie cutter questions, and I really appreciate the depth and the opportunity you've given me to be able to speak, and take my time with answers as opposed to the 3-second replies. I really appreciate it so much. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we hope that you will just be emboldened by this conversation to know that your music has a place.
Thank you.
I think it's so beautiful that we saw you perform live. As for everyone who didn't see you,
I just want to know, Manana, is there another show? Because I'm ready to go to another show. Like, that's all I'm saying. I'm ready to pay money again.
So I'll give the Cheeky Natives an exclusive. So what we're trying to do right now, Ne? is I'm trying to put together a more intimate show.
Hey, please
and
include us. Include us.
yes, no, definitely you'll be there. An intimate show where with a grand piano and everyone just sitting around, and then just maybe one or two other instrumentalists. So as soon as we have the dates ready and the venue ready, you will be the first to know. Well, the second, because I'll be the first, but you'll be definitely the second.
Please,
Please,
like
please,
I'm.
please can I just let you know that I'm going to be in the Eastern Cape in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
So when you think about your scheduling, then just
I'll factor that. Thank you.
I
Thank you
just
for
want
that.
you to think about that.
Is it gonna happen this year still, or are you looking at it in 2021?
2021, beginning of next year.
Okay, I'm there. I'm there.
Awesome.
I am there. Like
Awesome.
I'm
Thank
there.
you so much.
I see
Thank
there
you.
are a lot
Thank
of
you.
people who are like, this was so people who've been watching are like, this was so amazing. Thank you, folks. And there's another person who says, oh Manana, this was epic. And
Yeah.
Thingiwe also says, thank you, Manana. From the
Yeah.
Cheeky Natives,
Thank
thank
you
you so
Thank
much,
you.
Manana. We will see
Thank
you
you.
in 2021 at the intimate performance because we will be there.
We're
Thank
gonna
you so
get
much.
out first before everything.
And to everyone watching, thank you so much for supporting the Cheeky Natives in 2020. This is our final discussion for this year. But
Yeah.
stay tuned, we'll be releasing hefty podcasts, and then we'll be back in 2021 with more of this. So thank you everyone for your support.
Thank you so much to everybody who continues to support the Cheeky Natives. I think that like lockdown was wild, just how much support we had and so much how much interaction we had as well. But also just to really say that I'm so glad that we closed off with Manana. There's a thing about, people feeling that their music and their art has a place and that there are people who appreciate it. And I think that's so much about the Cheeky Natives wants to do is for Black artists to feel like the art that they put out, the artistic output that they put out is important and it has space and there are people who want to engage with it. So thank you so much, Manana, but also thank you to all of the Cheeky Natives. Our hearts are just like filled with gratitude and we can't wait to see what 2021 holds for the Cheeky Natives. I won't comment on the
please go stream Manana right now. You see, as you're leaving, start playing Manana as you're leaving. We appreciate you. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.